I've taken many pivots in my life, and not only the relationship pivots that I talked about, the broken engagement, and then realizing, that the traditional path to motherhood might not happen to me, might not happen for me. Also, I made some career pivots as well, but both of those moments forced me, one, just to slow down, re-examine how much of my identity was wrapped up in a future I assumed would unfold a certain way. And what I discovered that when you embrace the pivot and lean into it, it can be very empowering.
Welcome to Take a Beat, a podcast dedicated to those who are wanting to hit pause on the hustle, get clear on your direction, and head toward the life that you envision. Today's episode features an interview with Danielle Frank, a newly published author whose first book is a humorous take on parenting that also incorporates a bit of winemaking wisdom. Danielle's book not only embodies her experiences working in the wine and spirits industry, which she happened into after leaving a job in the entertainment industry that just didn't feel right. But it also speaks to another unexpected plot twist, which was not becoming a mother herself. However, while not a parent, Danielle is an aunt to her niece and nephew and many of her friends' kids. And she says it was easy to see the parallels between wine terminology and raising great kids. In this episode, Danielle not only shares one of the book's tongue-in-cheek lessons, but she also shares how pouring her creativity into this new book helped her to embrace life's detours. Take a listen to hear more. Welcome, Danielle. Thanks so much for joining. And I appreciate you coming on today to talk about your journey to writing your new book, A Wine Lover's Guide to Parenting. And what's also really interesting is that your book kind of encompasses some of the pivots that you've made in your own life, moving from the entertainment industry into the wine and spirits industry, and then also embracing that your life didn't follow a quote unquote traditional script, and that you're not a parent, but you are a devoted aunt and you've been involved with helping friends with their kids. So this book kind of speaks to those different plot twists, if I'm sort of interpreting that correctly.
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here on your fabulous podcast.
Well, I guess to get started, how did you get inspired to write the book? Where did it come from? What's its origin story?
Yeah, so I as you mentioned, the quote unquote traditional path of becoming a mother, becoming a parent. I had always envisioned that in my future. And I, always imagined I would embark on that path. I was engaged to be married, and my fiance, he has kids from his previous marriage, and in the 6+ years we were together, he sort of went back and forth of whether he wanted more kids. And when we got engaged, he said, "All right, let's do it. We can have a kid." And, of course, I thought I had it all, or I thought I had it all in my mind. But then I slowly started to see he really didn't want more kids. And I want to be with somebody that wants to embark on that journey with me. So I broke it off. And right at that time, I was, obviously sad, disappointed that my life wasn't unfolding as I thought it would. I was 38 at the time. And I was watching my niece and nephew, and I've always used creativity and writing as an outlet. I find it very therapeutic. So, I had been doing some writing following my breakup, and when I was at the same time, I was watching my niece and nephew, and while they're great kids, or were great kids, they're in college now, so they're adults, which is wild. But I was watching them, and they were whining about something, and I said, Auntie Danielle drinks wine. She doesn't listen to wine. And from there, the wheels started turning in my head. One is just really embracing this creative outlet for me of writing. I work in the wine and spirits industry. So, I love the idea of making wine terminology accessible to people. I love making people laugh. I love the idea of shaping kids to be great human beings, because I say you don't need to be a parent to know, good behavior in kids and humans. So it kind of all came together as sort of an homage to to this, to the parents around me, to my friends, my sister raising these fabulous kids, to getting my sense of nurturing out in this love letter to parents everywhere on how to raise good little human beings to be great adults.
So it was sort of a cathartic experience. And then it sounds like took advantage of your creativity and then also your wine wisdom and knowledge, which comes from your career.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always trying to think outside the box and trying to think of something different. And around this time, a book came out because I wrote this a long time ago. A book came out called Go the F to Sleep. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it was wildly popular. And it sort of opened up this new genre of adult children's book, taking this new style of talking to parents in a fun, unique way. And so, yeah, just all those things blended together. And I poured out the therapeutic aspect and the homage to everybody around me and to my sense of nurturing all into this project.
Well, I did read your book, and it is, first of all, I learned a lot more about winemaking than I had known before. Like, I didn't know what racking was or what the indentation in the bottom of a bottle is. So you can learn all of these different things. And it is a humorous, it's got rhyme to it, it's fun, it's lighthearted. What was that process like in terms of finding the humor in things?
Yeah, I've always loved to rhyme. I mean, even as a kid, I always did rhyming stories just for fun. So I do love that idea of rhyming and that's why also because of the rhymes and because of how the success of Go the F to Sleep came about, it sort of opened the door for me to write this project, to write a children's book, an adult children's book, but in the style of a children's book, how I think it should be consumed in a rhyme and to your point, like learning about the punt, the indentation at the bottom of the wine bottle and racking and all that. One, punt, rack, all that make great rhyming words. But, again, the book is, as you say, it's written like a children's book, illustrated. But every time I use wine terminology, it gives the definition because, yeah, I just love the idea of making any sort of quote unquote lesson. I don't proclaim to be an expert, but any sort of tongue-in-cheek satirical knowledge is fun and interspersing the knowledge along the way is that side of the wine lover and me wanting to share the love of wine.
And I guess sometimes it's easier to learn through metaphor, especially parenting. There can be so much pressure, but when you make it lighthearted and humorous and apply something like winemaking, maybe it just maybe takes a little of the pressure off sometimes of the seriousness that can come with that.
Absolutely, and that's the intent, right? It's meant to give parents or caretakers or anybody the intent is to give everybody a laugh, but also let them know, obviously it's a very serious job, but to have a little fun with it along the way. And it's okay to laugh about it and to smile and pour yourself a glass of wine as you're reading the book and rearing your child.
Would you be open to sharing or reading one of the chapters or the stories from the book?
I would love that. So I am going to read lesson 3, which is you don't want your kids to ferment. So ferment, it gives the definition, is ferment is the process of turning sugar into alcohol. So when you think about sugar as something sweet and alcohol, can be harsh. That's the lesson of this story. You don't want your kids to ferment, turn from sweet into something harsh and biting. So this chapter goes, manners, manners, manners are the key to it all. These lessons need to start even when they're small. Teach them this from day one before they start to crawl. You don't want your kids to be the sour grape in the bunch and turn into a spoiled brat that kids want to punch. When they start talking, make sure they know thank you and please, and to always say bless you when they hear someone sneeze. Please and thank you are an absolute must. Without that, your child's a total bust. There's nothing worse than a child who has behavior that is crude, because it'll continue as they're older and become someone who's rude. People don't take kindly to and aren't nice to those with attitude because it's very off-putting and puts others in a bad mood, oftentimes causing confrontation and leads to a nasty feud. Wanting to put a little bit of poison in your child's food. Is that really how you want your kids to be viewed? Wouldn't you prefer that they're someone who's wooed? Without manners, they'll ferment and turn into someone harsh and biting. They may turn into a kid who's rude, obnoxious, and always fighting. So teach your kids some manners and to have some heart and soul. Without that, your kid may well turn into an a-hole.
Which is great. You don't want your kids to ferment.
Yeah, yeah. I think we all can agree, like I said, you don't need to be a parent to know that having good manners is an important part to any human being. And so it's a fun way to just bring that to light and teach you all about fermentation and the words harsh related to wine terminology and so forth in this chapter.
What kind of response have you been getting so far from the book from people who've been reading it?
Yeah, I think people love it. They, thank God. They're gravitating towards it. They're loving the lessons told in a lighthearted way and learning about wine terminology. And again, it's fun. Again, I don't proclaim to be an expert. It's just meant to be satirical. And that's a lesson for everybody, right? And sort of the theme of your podcast, for example, that message of taking a beat, right? It's taking a moment, taking a pivot in life, taking a different avenue sometimes can be a fun way and an empowering way to absorb the lesson or to absorb the information. And sometimes we need to take a beat and do things differently. And that was my goal with this, is just putting something out that's a little different as well.
I think it's cool that you have embraced the plot twists in your own life, maybe not immediately, that it can take time to heal or recalibrate. But with this book, it sounds like you took these life experiences and turned them into something meaningful and creative for you and for others. And I can appreciate the resilience that probably took.
Yeah, I've taken many pivots in my life, and not only the relationship pivots that I talked about, the broken engagement, and then realizing, that the traditional path to motherhood might not happen to me, might not happen for me. Also, I made some career pivots as well. As you mentioned, I started my career in entertainment PR, and I segued into the wine and spirits industry, and it became a major pivot. But both of those moments forced me, one, just to slow down, re-examine how much of my identity was wrapped up in a future I assumed would unfold a certain way. And what I discovered, that when you embrace the pivot and lean into it, it can be very empowering. And, sometimes people get stuck in the muddied waters of thinking what could have been, and that's not going to propel you forward on this new path you're on. I always say this isn't the Wizard of Oz, that there's one yellow brick road that leads you to Oz. There's so many different paths along the way. And it's easy to get tripped up along that path when, something you envision isn't going to happen. But what I've learned is always to jump over those rocks that are in the way on the path and just, like I say, propel yourself forward, because when you can, you can lean into it and it can be very empowering and you can embrace it. And, as I said, I made a big career pivot, and I thought I was taking a step back, which I did. I took a big step back in terms of my salary and my role and responsibility when I went from entertainment PR to the wine and spirits industry. But taking that step back, one, I did it because where I was last at in my role in entertainment PR, I had that, I worked at Miramax Films for 6+ years, and there's always going to be challenging days at work, but there was never one day that I had that pit in my stomach like in the morning, when I didn't want to wake up and I didn't want to go to work. But at this job that I worked at here in LA, just the way this company was run, I remember there was like a couple mornings I was like, oh, that feeling of like not wanting to go to the office. And I thought, what an awful feeling. We spend most of our time at our place of employment, and I don't ever want to feel this way. I don't want to have this feeling. And so I left. And although it was unsettling, as I said, I stumbled into this job that I thought would be temporary in the wine and spirits industry, took a big step back in salary and the position. But having done that, one, I've never had that feeling in my stomach ever again, which has been empowering. But two, it's sometimes taking a step back helps propel you forward. And, here I am over 22 years in the wine and spirits industry in a high level position, loving it every step of the way, and embracing that life's pivots can be extraordinary.
And if I remember correctly, you left your PR, the entertainment PR job without anything lined up. So that was a bit of a risk, just sort of leaving and with nothing.
Yeah, it was a big risk, especially because I'm very type A. Like for me, I would never leave a job without having another job, but that's how angst driven it was. And I just didn't like that feeling. And, certainly I wouldn't recommend, leaving a job and having another job. But again, sometimes when you take that leap of faith, it gives you the clarity that you need to take a step back and redesign what your next step forward looks like. And that became in the relationship realm as well. When you take a beat and you re-examine in the career, I just knew like I don't want that feeling ever again. Same thing with the relationship. After I broke off my engagement, that helped redefine all relationships moving forward. Just again, taking that beat and re-examining what is it I don't want moving forward. Because, that's what life's lessons are about is as long as you're taking a lesson. I always say I have no regrets in life. I have no regrets that the engagement was broken off. I have no regrets about working at that company because as long as I've learned a lesson from it and haven't repeated that behavior that I don't want in my life, then it's a beautiful thing.
And when you were making that leap, if I also recall correctly, the next opportunity for you kind of came out of thin air. It wasn't something you went looking for. It just sort of happened for you.
Yeah, as I mentioned, when I was at Miramax for 6+ years, I mean, it was a great job. Traveling in my 20s, living in a studio apartment in New York, but traveling to the Cannes Film Festival and Berlin Film Festival and Venice and living this fabulous life. But, again, it was, there were hard days, but I never had that pit in my stomach until I went to this PR firm in LA. So yeah, when I left, that's kind of was my guiding light, my guiding force was of course, it's hard to know when you're embarking on a new career, like, is it going to be a good company? Some, companies represent themselves and it doesn't always work out that way. But at least I just told myself, like, you know, I felt empowered that should I ever be in that position again, it's okay. I'll be able to, not feel stuck in it, and that would be important. So I was kind of like trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and my sister was working for a company that worked for Bacardi USA on the East Coast, and she told me about this job, and it's like, oh, great, you work from home, and you had these perks and these certain things, and you're out and meeting people, which it came to be one of the definitions of the things I really enjoy about work is like having all these customers and being very hands-on with like, relationship building type of career, type of industry. Yeah, so I fell into this. I thought it'd be temporary, and I worked at Bacardi for over 10 years and just realized along the way that this is the kind of role I like, being consumer facing. And I got very lucky. I got very lucky, was there 10 years. And then I started with Moet Hennessy for now. I've been there 11 years. So I got lucky just with two great companies, but also, as I said, like, having that guiding force of if I ever was in a role that just gave me that pit, I know that I can move on and find something else rather than, be stuck in something that doesn't make me happy in life, in career and relationships.
So essentially having the courage to walk away and then not know what's coming next per se and like stand in that uncertainty, and eventually something came about. And I'm guessing potentially also too in your personal life.
Well, exactly, because when I was thinking about leaving my fiance, I remember having that feeling how lonely and unhappy I was in the relationship and how awful that was. Like, you shouldn't feel lonely being in a relationship. And having left my career in entertainment and segueing and pivoting into a completely new career, that certainly gave me the power and the feeling to know that I don't need to stay in something and be stuck. I don't need to stay in this relationship, and I'll be fine on my own. And it was very empowering. When I left, I never cried another day because I felt so relieved and empowered. And that was the same feeling I had when I left the PR agency. I just was the sense of relief,
Mm.
and that helped guided me through to the next step.
Well, it definitely sounds like you have a lot of courage and self-belief, to be able to do that and not then turn around and go back potentially.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly easier said than done, to tell people believe in yourself, right? It's not easy, but you are your biggest champion. And, I think when you sometimes when we're in that negative space of, oh, that angst of a career or the angst of a bad relationship, sometimes we make bad decisions. But if you can just let yourself take a minute to reflect internally, then hopefully you can believe in yourself to make the right decision that's good for you, not for your situation, oh, I should just stay in this relationship because I'm scared to be alone. But it should be about, I shouldn't stay in this relationship because I'm not happy. Not just, it should be about what you need. And think about what it is that drives you and empowers you. Whether if it's relationships that we're talking about, is do you think you're supposed to get married because that's what you've been told? Or is that what you really want? And if it's what you really want, then what is it that you really want in a partner, not what other people are telling you? I mean, a lot of just internalization. Same thing with a career. Again, it's not like jobs are just easy to come by. So it's not so easy for people to just be like, I want to do this. And I know somebody that was looking for a job and they were like, well, I want to work from home, but I want this salary. And you're never going to get everything, right? Even a relationship, you can make a list of your perfect guy all you want. Just think about what are the must-haves. Think about, what you will settle for and what you won't settle for. Everything is compromise, but think about what's going to make you happy, not the people around you. And do that. Make your list, not the list that you think you're supposed to have. That's always the first thing. And then, especially in a career, of course, if you can do this while you're still in your job, it's not always easy to find another job without having another job, because then also, people tend to panic when they're out of work and pick the next thing that they just get offered, and that's not going to drive you into the success that you want. If you can do it while you're still, in a place that your decision is not being made out of necessity, but out of desire, then that's the most important thing.
Well, I think it's there's a lot of nuggets of wisdom in there. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I appreciate you sharing your story. And also, I imagine that having a creative outlet, like for you, writing and doing things that are even outside of a relationship or a job, has probably brought a lot of fulfillment, or just maybe even helped to balance out some of those plot twists and pivots where you are pursuing something that really feels good to you just for the sheer sense of like that just feels good to you.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a great point is, unfortunately, the path to motherhood didn't happen for me, but I don't feel any sense of loss because, as I said, the nurturing doesn't go away. It just comes into other avenues, other paths. And that, again, it comes into being heavily involved in my niece and nephew's life, but my friend's kid's life. But nurturing also comes into, nurturing my career. And, I travel for work, I travel personally, and that became my baby, so to speak. It's, finding those other things that complement your life and make you happy. And writing became a nurturing avenue for me. So finding those other things that fulfill you can be equally as rewarding.
What is next for you in terms of the book? Do you want to write more? What do you see in terms of continuing to nurture that baby, so to speak?
Oh, I've started a whiskey lover's guide to dog breeds. I am a dog mom, so that's next. Yes, I've started writing that. And then I have some other just fun writing projects as well. And then figuring out what my next country is that I'm going to visit. I'm going to be in Spain in March. So,
Very cool.
it's all about rewarding myself with the things that I enjoy, which is writing and traveling.
And if people want to find out more about the book, find out more about you, or even find the book, where can they go?
They can find the book online on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com. My website, daniellefrankauthor.net, will be live in about a week. so they can see everything about me and the book and all these fabulous podcasts and testimonials and everything. And as I release more books, they'll be shared on the website.
Well, thank you so much for coming on again and sharing your story and your wisdom, which is so helpful. And someone who's, walks the talk, so to speak. I think that that is really cool and inspirational. So again, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun.
Be sure to check out Danielle's book, A Wine Lover's Guide to Parenting, and learn more about her upcoming projects at our website, which is linked in the episode description. Thanks for listening and take care.